There's a strange kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work or people or even pain. It comes from the way your mind never lets the world be simple. Even on a calm day, it finds something. A loose thread, a future disaster, a mistake from 5 years ago that suddenly feels urgent. A conversation that hasn't happened yet, but you rehearse it like a trial. And the most confusing part is this. Sometimes your life is finally stable, but your mind becomes worse. It's like it needs a problem to chew on, like peace feels unnatural, like silence feels suspicious. So you start asking the wrong question. What's wrong with me? When the real question is, what if your mind is addicted to problems? Not because you're broken, not because you're weak, not because you love negativity, but because the mind was never designed to make you happy. It was designed to keep you alive, and survival is a problem-solving machine. If you watch closely, you'll see it. The mind doesn't just think, it hunts. It scans your life like a security camera, not for joy, for threat, not for meaning, for risk. And the moment it finds something, anything, it tightens. A sense of something needs attention. A low-grade alarm that becomes your personality. You call it anxiety, overthinking, self-doubt, restlessness. But underneath those words is a single mechanism. The mind wants certainty, and problems create a false sense of control. Because when there's a problem, there's something to do. A plan, a fix, an action, a narrative. But when life is quiet, there's nothing to grip. And for a mind trained on control, that feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Think about it. Have you ever finished solving one problem, and within minutes you felt the mind reach for another, like a hand searching the table for a cigarette? One worry ends, another begins. A project gets done, then suddenly you obsess about your health. Your health feels okay, then you obsess about money. Money feels stable, then you obsess about meaning. Meaning feels close, then you obsess about whether you're wasting your life. It's not that these concerns are fake, it's that the mind uses them like fuel. Because worry gives the mind a job. And a mind without a job has to face something it hates, the present moment. A moment where you can't solve your way out. A moment where you have to feel. This is why so many people are terrified of stillness. Not because stillness is empty, but because stillness removes the distraction. And once the noise is gone, you start hearing what was always underneath it. Grief you never let move through you. Loneliness you kept buried under productivity. Fear you masked with planning. Anger you turned into self-improvement. So the mind does what it always does. It protects you by creating problems. Here's the darker truth. Sometimes the mind would rather keep you anxious than let you be present with an emotion you haven't metabolized. Because anxiety feels active. It feels intelligent. It feels like you're doing something. But presence is passive. Presence is naked. Presence doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain. It doesn't justify. Presence just shows you what's real. And what's real can be uncomfortable. So the mind offers you a deal. I'll keep you busy with worry, so you don't have to feel what you've been avoiding. It's a brilliant strategy. It also ruins lives quietly. Now let's talk about why it feels like an addiction. Because in a way it is. Not an addiction to pain, an addiction to resolution. The mind loves the feeling of, I figured it out. That moment when confusion snaps into clarity. When chaos becomes a plan, when uncertainty becomes a story, even if it's a terrible story, even if it's a paranoid story. At least it's a story, and a story feels safer than the unknown. So the mind creates loops. What if this happens? What if I fail? What if they leave? What if I made the wrong choice? What if time runs out? Each what if feels like preparation. But most of it is not preparation, it's rumination, and rumination is not thinking. Rumination is chewing on the same bone to avoid hunger. There's a reason the mind returns to the same fears, because the fear isn't trying to be solved, it's trying to be felt. But your mind doesn't know how to feel safely, so it thinks instead. It thinks about feeling, it thinks around feeling, it describes feeling, but it doesn't stay with it long enough for it to pass. So the emotion remains stuck, and the mind keeps circling, like a dog guarding a door that leads nowhere. Let me give you an image. Imagine your mind is a factory, and inside that factory there's a machine that never stops. It takes raw experience, a comment, a memory, a sensation in your chest, and it turns it into a product, a problem, a label, a worry, a future scenario, and then it sells it to you as urgent. Look, this needs fixing. But here's what you've never questioned. What if the factory is producing problems just to stay running? Because a factory that stops goes silent. And silence is where you might finally meet yourself. The tragedy is that most people believe the mind is their ally. They say, I'm just trying to be responsible. But responsibility has a different texture. Responsibility is clear, direct, it moves, then stops. An anxious mind is never done. It doesn't solve, it cycles, because the goal was never to solve. The goal was to keep you occupied. So what do? Do we stop thinking? No, that's another trap, because trying to stop thinking is just the mind turning itself into a problem again. I need to fix my mind. Same addiction, new packaging. The real move is subtler. You learn to recognize the moment the mind is using problems as a sedative. You catch it at the beginning, not after it becomes a storm. And you ask a question that changes the whole pattern. Is this a real problem or a comfort problem? A real problem is actionable. It has a step, a call to make, a boundary to set, a decision to take. A comfort problem is endless. It multiplies, it spirals, it keeps you awake at night. A real problem responds to action. A comfort problem responds to awareness. Try this the next time your mind starts scanning. When you feel that familiar tightening, that mental searchlight turning on, pause. Don't fight the thought. Just label what's happening. Problem-seeking mode. That's it. Not I'm broken. Not I'm anxious again. Not I'm failing. Just problem-seeking mode. And then do the most radical thing you can do in modern life. Feel what the problem is protecting you from. Not in a dramatic way, in a simple way. Where in your body is it? Chest, throat, stomach. Stay there for 10 seconds, not analyzing it, not naming it, just staying. What you'll notice is this. The mind hates this. It will try to pull you away with another thought. Yeah, but what about... That's the addiction trying to restore itself. And you don't have to win a battle. You just have to return. Again and again. Not aggressively. Gently. Like turning your face back toward the light. Here's what begins to happen when you do this consistently. The mind learns that silence is not danger, that stillness is not death, that uncertainty is survivable. And slowly, the need for problems reduces, not because you forced it, because the nervous system starts to trust life again. Now here's the part most people don't expect. When the mind is no longer addicted to problems, you don't become careless. You become sharper because you stop wasting energy on imaginary fires. You stop living in rehearsals. You stop arguing with people who aren't in the room. Your attention returns. And when your attention returns, life becomes vivid again. The taste of coffee, the weight of your breath, the sound of your own footsteps. These are not small things. These are reality. And reality is the only place peace exists. So let me say it clearly. Your mind is not your enemy. It's just doing what it was trained to do. It learned that problems equal safety, that vigilance equals control, that constant thinking equals survival. And maybe once, long ago, it did protect you. But you're not that person anymore. You don't need to live like the world is about to collapse. Not all the time. Not in your own head. The next time your mind reaches for a problem, don't shame it. Don't diagnose it. Don't turn it into another identity. Just notice the reach. And in that noticing, create a gap, a space, a breath. Because inside that gap is the beginning of freedom. Not the freedom of never having problems, but the freedom of not needing them. And when you no longer need problems to feel in control, you finally meet the quiet thing you were chasing all along. Peace, not as a concept, as a physical reality, a softening, a return. This is the Thought Alchemist.